Asante sana.
Let's have our seats kindly. Let's have. Haya. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me begin first by giving the formal address to this gathering. And I would start by recognizing the representatives from the University Students Association who have helped me in organizing this forum. Esteemed student team leaders or team members, members of the business community, members of Bunge la Wananchi, my team from the National Treasury, the national government officials led by the county commissioner, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I think it's afternoon now. Good afternoon. Let me first start by extending to you all a warm welcome to this stakeholder engagement forum. I wish to thank you all for finding time to attend this very critical event that provides us with an opportunity to share our views on the management of public resources in the country, and particularly in the budget process, more so as it relates to our development agenda. So at that point, I want just to mention that today's engagement was covering not only privatization, but also the budget-making process, which has just begun. The coming month of February, we are going to table into the National Assembly, to the Parliament actually, both houses, our budget policy statement for 2026-27. And therefore, this engagement is very important. It is not an academic exercise. It's an engagement that is going to inform what will be coming into our budget estimates for 2026-2027. So I want to mention that this process built up not only from the meeting held on the 10th of December 2025 in Nairobi, where I launched the National Budget Students Forum with the sole purpose of embedding a youth-centric perspective into our national economic decision-making processes, but also from my previous engagements with Bunge la Wananchi on budget process. Remember last year, I had a historic engagement at Jivanji Garden with the public, more particularly Bunge la Wananchi, on the 2025-2026 budget. That was followed with other engagements, notably in Mombasa, Eldoret, and Kisumu. So during the students' launch, it was agreed on the need for a wider engagement with the youth of this country in their respective regions on matters pertaining to public financial management. Further, in view of the recent government efforts on privatization, it has been deemed fit to broaden this engagement to include the business community and the Bunge la Wananchi for a more comprehensive stakeholder information and participation. The successful engagement with the Bunge la Wananchi in the last financial year could only be built upon. Feedback from the Bunge membership has been that this engagement must continue. The National Treasury's engagement with members of the business community is also not new. Under my watch, it has been definitely been enriching in shaping my resolve to have in place more inclusive policies that allow more Kenyans to participate in public resource management. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to emphasize that this is not just a policy initiative, but rather a legal obligation rooted in Article 201A of our Constitution, which mandates for public participation in all financial matters so as to enhance transparency, accountability, efficient utilization of resources, and value for money in the management of public resources. And I think other speakers who have spoken ahead of me have also mentioned the same. So then it means Kenyans are already resonating very well with our Constitution. So at the National Treasury, we have come to the realization that the government alone cannot effectively respond to the multifaceted challenges facing our country, particularly on unemployment, gaps in skills development, digital literacy, entrepreneurship, and inclusive governance for a demographic dividend. In this regard, I have prioritized stakeholder participation as a key dimension of governance and one of the pillars for a sustainable development. We shall enhance collaboration with our stakeholders, including the youth, private sector, experts, civil society organizations, volunteers, and local communities, which is ever more critical. My forging partnerships and collaboration and public engagement will harness the government ideas and skills and resources of diverse stakeholders to better deliver services and policies in transformative ways and address the existing gaps in financial, human, and technical resources. I wish to reiterate that the youth are a significant demographic of our country, making up 75% of the population, with a potential for contributing towards economic development of the country. And in this regard, their voices must be central to how we plan, how we allocate resources, and how we utilize the allocated resources. This has therefore necessitated a shift in public financial management towards inclusive and participatory governance, where citizens, including our youth, actively engage and participate in policy formulation and act as co-creators of government policies and services. Ladies and gentlemen, Kenya has adopted privatization as a strategic economic policy shift to promote efficiency in the economy by subjecting more services to market forces, to improving competitiveness, revenue generation, aid in fiscal consolidation path by reducing government spending on inefficient state corporations and market development by deepening Kenya's capital market. The objective of our privatization agenda is to ease the burden of governance of these institutions from the government to the private sector, who are better equipped for the market economy. The National Treasury will, in this regard, continue with sound macroeconomic policies to enhance resilience and create a conducive environment for the private sector, including the local business communities, to thrive. This strategic response is anchored in the bottom-up economic transformation agenda and also in the fourth medium-term plan. These frameworks prioritize sectors with high youth employment potential, such as agriculture, micro, small, and medium enterprises, housing sector, healthcare, and the digital and creative economy. These sectors are not only engines of growth, but also platforms for innovation, entrepreneurship, and job creation for the youth. Over the recent past, the youth of this country have expressed themselves over important national issues, which included high living costs, unemployment, and governance transparency. I'm sure we can all still remember what happened in 2024. What happened in 2024 was the youth expressing themselves on governance issues in this country, telling those who are in leadership that they care, that the youth are concerned about governance and about transparency. These concerns are valid and demand our immediate attention. The government has committed to transforming these frustrations into constructive dialogue and tangible solution and action. This forum, therefore, provides the perfect opportunity to provide our feedback on the necessary actions from the government to address these challenges. So during this process, we will welcome positive critique of our public financial management systems and policies to shape the budget process. And that is why I like the way the student from Rongo University came out with weaknesses. He said he was going to concentrate on weaknesses, and I think I welcome that. Your active engagement in this process will ensure efficient and transparent use of public funds, ensuring that resources allocated to address youth empowerment achieves the intended objectives. So during this launch, the launch of this process, I was elated to have received a written memorandum outlining some practical measures through which we can enhance financial support for students in tertiary institutions. We have noted the valuable feedback which includes strengthening financial support for students, financing, reforming students' loan financing through fiscal policy, targeting student grant funding for vulnerable students, facilitate provision of affordable students' accommodation, and establishing an emergency student support fund. This will be consolidated alongside the views from these regional fora for consideration during the preparation of the financial year 2026-27 and the medium-term budget process. Let me pause a bit just to mention that what we are doing here today is not going to end in Migori. We have purposed as National Treasury under my leadership to have 7 engagements across the country on the budget of 2026-2027 and privatization as a concept. From here, tomorrow, we will be in the Western region, Kakamega, to be specific, on the same engagement. Then on Sunday, we will proceed to North Rift and engage in Eldoret. Then following week, we are going to engage South Rift residents in Nakuru, and then the following day, we will do Kiambu for the former central province. And then the following week, which will be the final leg, we will be proceeding to Garissa for the northern region, and then the following day, do Kilifi for the greater coast region or coastal region, and finally we will end with Meru for the wider eastern province. And I want to also mention, as I've just read on the issues of education, and capture this, that out of this engagement, if those of you who are proactive, who have gone ahead to check the BPS for 2026-2027, you will realize that we are proposing to increase funding for higher education loans board from 41 billion to 58 billion. That's almost 40% increase in that funding. We are also proposing to enhance the university scholarship from what it is today of 16 billion. We are proposing to enhance it to almost 34 billion. That is another increase of about 16 billion. Now, that is a demonstration that the engagement we have been having with the youth and the students is not in vain, that we are listening. So we will make those proposals to Parliament. Parliament will consider and approve. I want to respond at this stage that I've heard some people say that we are defunding education as a government. Far from it. Let me be categorical. The truth is that education requirement is very high. But we have made deliberate efforts to make sure that we make education affordable in this country. And that is why, if you look at the budget for education in 2022 and what we have proposed for 2026-2027, it's an increase of about 150 billion going to the education sector. So whoever is claiming that we are defunding education is being economical with the truth. We are actually enhancing the budget for education, and I was looking at the numbers. Last financial year, which is the current financial year, the current financial year 2025-2026, we have provided 703 billion for education. But in the coming financial year, we are even proposing a higher figure, moving from 703 billion to 748 billion. That is an additional 45 billion shillings going to the education sector, even with the financial challenges we are facing. I wanted just to underscore, because many of us have spoken about funding education, I wanted to underscore that at this stage so that it comes out clearly. Furthermore, we are also aware of the financial strains facing our public institutions, which impact the quality of education and future prospects of our youth. Our strategy emphasizes increasing funding, as I've mentioned, also dealing with infrastructure development in the schools and other learning institutions, and curriculum reforms to equip students with skills relevant to the evolving job market, particularly in areas like artificial intelligence, data science, green technologies, and vocational trades. Not forgetting the investment that we are putting in employing additional teachers. This we have spoken about, and I continue to speak about it, that this government from 2022 to date has employed 76,000 additional teachers, a record in 3 years, and we are going to employ 24,000 more teachers in this financial year. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you are aware, the government has been in the process of formulating the 2026-27 and the medium-term budget. We have in this regard prepared a draft 2026 budget policy statement containing the proposed policies and resource limit for the period. This document has been uploaded on the National Treasury website for public review and comments. I want to invite you to go to the National Treasury's website to see for yourself, because it's a public document, the budget policy statement. It will show you where we want this country to go. It will also show you the budget ceilings for each sector. You can see how much we are allocating for health, how much we are allocating for education, how much we are allocating for social intervention, and how much we are even allocating for infrastructure, and all the other sectors, including security, so that you can comment, you can inform the discussion around the budget for 2026-27. A lot of times, we wait until the budgets are concluded, then we start lamenting and complaining why a specific sector has not received enhanced budgetary provision. Yet now you have the opportunity to make your voice heard by the National Treasury and the government of Kenya through National Assembly. Please take advantage of this window and communicate with us. Even if you write to National Assembly, all the correspondences received at the National Assembly must be acted on. That I have communicated to my team, and they are aware. So please take advantage. So I'm looking forward to receiving valuable comments from, to inform the finalization before submission to Parliament by mid-February. I wish to urge for your concerted effort to enable us build a Kenya where opportunities are accessible to all, where youth are empowered to lead, and where our collective aspirations become reality. Together, we can forge a prosperous, inclusive, and resilient nation. Ladies and gentlemen, as I come back to privatization, privatization is often part of a broader process of structural reform. Privatization transactions are very complex and require careful consideration of a number of issues. Well-designed and implemented privatization policies are essential to ensure credibility of reforms, to help governments achieve their objectives, and to create efficient and competitive markets for goods and services. Privatization of state-owned enterprises ushers in the private sector to participate in commercial activities that government-owned enterprises are undertaking. And that is why recently we passed a bill which is now an act of parliament and is part of our legal framework called Government-Owned Enterprises Act. That act has brought significant reforms in how we are governing or going to govern commercially viable, profitable government entities, about 60 of them. They are going to be run with a commercial mindset, not where when Mbadi fails in his bid, in his political bid, then you find a space for them in these state-owned enterprises. That is going to be a thing of the past. Board members or governance structures of these government-owned enterprises are going to be recruited competitively through interviews, and they are not going to remain political appointees as it is today. We will still continue making political appointees in other state-owned enterprises that are not commercially viable or which are not profit-making. You can go and earn some allowances in those other enterprises. But those which are considered commercial enterprises are going to be run with a business mindset. That is the reform that we have brought in state-owned enterprises. Let me move quickly to conclude my formal address. Then I will have a few minutes to engage you off the cuff. Na hapo naweza ongea Kijaluo nikipenda. So this is necessary because the private sector carries out commercial activities more efficiently, and that has been said, than the public sector, especially in a competitive industry. By the way, I hope you are aware that you as individuals and your private businesses are included when I make reference to the private sector. Every one of us here belongs to the private sector. So the benefits of privatization include lower prices, and that it surprised me when many of us had the feeling that if we privatize KPC, that it would result into higher prices. That, far from it, it should be the reverse. And I will explain to you once I finish my speech. Results in better quality of goods and services produced, wider choices for consumers, more innovation, minimal red tape in decision making, and less corruption. To safeguard these benefits of privatization, the government has a social obligation to maintain a fair business environment through appropriate regulations and policies. Already, Kenya has developed a fairly robust regulatory environment with the Competition Authority of Kenya overseeing all sectors of the economy, supported by sector-specific regulators such as Communications Authority of Kenya. So privatization as a key tool to address the following three major economic balances government, which I want to mention, the three major economic issues that need to be addressed through privatization. One is the government debt, two is the public expenditure, and three is revenue raising. So in this regard, a robust program must be designed to address fiscal sustainability challenges by limiting government debt, constraining budget deficits, and promoting counter-cyclical fiscal policy. Having pursued fiscal consolidation in the recent years, the policy has now reached optimal levels and hence cannot be pushed further. Kenyans have told us no more taxation. No more taxation. Ama kuna mtu hapa anataka tulipe ushuru zaidi ya what we are paying today. Kama kunae, nataka kuona ukiinua mkono. Kama unataka kulipa more taxes. Kuna mtu hapa anataka tuendelee na kukopa deni zaidi. Then we must be innovative. We must be creative, because services must still be provided. Kenyans still want services. So for us to finance those services without more taxes and without taking more debt, then we must be innovative. We must be creative. Number one, we must curb corruption. We must reduce corruption. That is why we are coming up with measures like e-procurement, treasury single account, to make sure that we reduce the exposure that public officers have in taking advantage of our systems and misdirecting our taxes. And then we have to also raise revenues in a different way. Having pursued fiscal consolidation in the recent years, as I said, the policy has now reached optimal levels and hence cannot be pushed further. In this case, an economic stimulus mechanism must be pursued. You will agree that unlike taxation, and I hope you listen there, unlike taxation, privatization never reduces private sector wealth. Privatization, in most cases, encourages propensity to invest and enhances aggregate demand, which in the long run would widen the revenue base. Taxation reduces private sector wealth. When you are taxed, money is being taken away from you. It reduces your wealth. Whether you are very rich, moderately rich, or barely surviving, like many of us. But still, we are coming for your money in your pocket, despite the struggles. So taxation is something that, even though we can't avoid it, but it reduces our wealth. But privatization does not. It does the opposite. Privatization gives you an opportunity to invest your resources that you have in an asset that would be profitable and that would give you more resources. As I conclude, I want to say that our economy is in a critical turning point. And to sustain the economic achievements realized thus far, both from a macro and fiscal perspective, the low inflation that we are talking about, the interest rates that are coming down. By the way, 1 year ago, the average bank lending rate was at 17.2%. Today it is 14.9%. It is coming down. And I want to, that I think is a message I'm sending to our friend from the Chambers of Commerce. It is coming down, although we would want the interest rates to come down at a faster rate than it is today. And that is why we are telling banks they must take advantage of the rates, that the lowering of the base lending rate, to bring down the rates of loans that we give to the private sector. But for us to maintain that momentum of these positives at the macro and fiscal level, we must turn to innovative financing mechanisms to fund our infrastructure and public service projects. So as the financial needs of the government continue to outpace available public resources, private sector participation has become a critical tool in addressing infrastructure gaps, enhancing service delivery, and promoting sustainable development. There are many success stories on privatization, ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, before you allow me to make a few off-the-cuff remarks. It is not just Safaricom. By the way, let me remind you, Safaricom was barely a department in the government. It's a small thing, making some meager profit. And people were happy with it that time, that this is a profitable company. The government took a decisive decision in 2008 to privatize Safaricom. In fact, even earlier, to invite partners. Then after that, after inviting the partners, in 2008, the government offered to the general public part of Safaricom. That is why today we own 25% of Safaricom as individuals, as Kenyans. 25%. Look at the transformation that has taken place in Safaricom. The kind of profitability of this venture. What makes you think that we have reached the optimum? There is still room for Safaricom to even be more profitable. And let me tell you, the technology space and telecommunication, more particularly telecommunication, is advancing rapidly. You cannot afford to be static. But with heavy government presence in Safaricom, we will be stifling growth in Safaricom. Because government by its nature, whether you go to America, you go to China, you come back to Kenya, is bureaucratic. Government systems are bureaucratic. It is like there is a policy in government that a document cannot be transacted fast. So if you want to allow private sector to thrive, if a company to thrive or a business to thrive, you must inject private sector ethics into the management of that entity. That is why I am saying, apart from Safaricom, look at KCB. Kenya Commercial Bank was on its knees, was barely surviving a while back. Where is it today? It is one of the most profitable banks in this country, comparable only to a few. Because of privatization. Kenya Power, someone talked about Kenya Power, whether we will privatize. Kenya Power is already enjoying privatization. We privatized Kenya Power and Light. Before, it was running into losses and losses and losses. Today, Kenya Power has started making profit because of privatization. What of Kenyan? I can go on and on. Of course, there are also failures, like Uchumi. We try to privatize it. It's a total flop. So it depends on how you execute privatization and the timing. If your timing is wrong, you will get it wrong. And I will tell you, with my knowledge and understanding, our timing for Kenya, for KPC, the Kenya pipeline, is perfect. If we don't do it now, believe me, we will regret a few years to come. Don't ask me why. This is the time to privatize KPC to make it more profitable. That is a company that has the potential. If you have money, if you have some money to spare, kindly save it. We are issuing IPO next week for Safaricom, God willing. Thank you. Wacha sasa nirudi kwa off the cuff. And I want to say this in English before maybe you allow me. I know there are a few of us in the gathering who don't understand Doluo, including